All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session of the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series. The K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series is designed to help K-12 educators reimagine education with Blackboard's teaching and learning solutions. The K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series harnesses the power of our K-12 community of academic leaders, teachers, and other experts to provide relevant, real-time, on-demand, and ongoing professional development opportunities for K-12 educators. My name is Katie Gallagher, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Blackboard's Teaching and Learning Solutions and Products. I'll be serving as the moderator for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series. Thank you to Colleen Smith from our K-12 marketing team and to Misty Cobb, our Senior Solutions Engineer from the K-12 SE team, who will be helping to answer questions today in the chat. We'll be joining you for the K-12 BITS series this fall, and we're always open to new ideas for topics for the series. So please let us know if you have an interest in presenting in the spring series, and you can always email me at katie.gallagher@blackboard.com. Each webinar in this series will be recorded. You can search for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series playlist on the Blackboard TV YouTube channel or go to tinyurl.com/bitsK12. You'll also be receiving the recording and the presentation slides in a PDF form a few days after each webinar by email. And lastly, you'll receive an invitation to participate in the professional learning community on course sites designed to augment this series and create an avenue for ongoing collaboration and dialogue. So please be sure to accept this invitation and participate in the online PLC with educators across the United States and world. As you can see, we have many exciting professional development sessions lined up. Be sure to join us next Monday for the Flipped Classroom, Growing Student Engagement in Elementary Instrumental Music with Kristen Gomez from Arlington Public Schools. You can go to bb.blackboard.com/K12bits, and it's convenient because you can register for this session or any other session within the series and all at once. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the new BB K12 Live app for Android and iOS. Just simply search for the BB K12 Live app in the store, and it's a great way to access PD on demand anytime, anywhere. You can catch up on the best sessions from Blackboard World this summer for K-12, and every session from this series is added to the app as we capture the recording. So on-demand PD for your teachers, please spread the word. Easy access from any device. We're very pleased to welcome both Brandy Todd and Leanne Ford from Piedmont City Public Schools today. They'll take us through making the most of your technology initiative, how to effectively leverage technology in a one-to-one classroom. This presentation will describe how teachers in Piedmont City School District have gradually transformed pedagogy through their one-to-one laptop initiative. Learn how to effectively incorporate 21st century skills while still teaching state-mandated standards in both an elementary and high school classroom. Also, learn ways to apply the SAMR model for technology integration while using blended learning to personalize instruction. Mrs. Leanne Ford is a 9th grade history teacher and an instructional technology coach at Piedmont High School. She earned National Board Certification in 2011 and has been teaching since 1998. Mrs. Ford has presented at the Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools, JSU Core Academy, Mooresville Summer Connection, Alabama Educational Technology Conference, and Blackboard World. Mrs. Brandy Todd is a 5th grade teacher at Piedmont Elementary School. During her 14-year career, she's gained National Board Certification also in 2011 and Jacksonville State University Cooperating Teacher of the Year Award in 2012. Mrs. Todd has presented at the Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools, JSU Core Academy, the Alabama Educational Technology Conference, the School Superintendents of Alabama Conference, the National Board Association Conference, and Blackboard World. So welcome to Leanne and Brandy. You can see their contact information is provided on this slide as well. We're very excited for their session today. Before I pass it over to them, just want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. For those of you that are on the line, we do record every session, so if you could be sure to either mute your handset or use *6 to mute the line. We will definitely be watching the chat and the Q&A box for questions throughout, and are happy to feed those questions to Leanne and Brandy as we go when it makes sense. We'll definitely be leaving time for open Q&A at the end as well. But please don't be shy with the questions, comments, and feedback. We want to make the sessions as interactive as possible. So don't hesitate to use those tools, and remember *6 to mute and to unmute. So thank you very much to Leanne and Brandy, and a big welcome. We are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Katie.
Great, and I can hear you very well, so thanks so much. Good.
Okay, we just wanted to begin today and tell you a little bit about our story. You have to understand where we've been to understand where we are. This is an initiative that we started in 2009, and we're in a very rural part of Alabama, very low income. Most of our kids, 70% or so of our students, receive free and reduced lunch. So it's a very economically ravaged town. We've lost several industries. We were a textile-based community, and all of those industries are gone. So we were looking for a way to try to encourage some growth in our community, and one way that our superintendent thought that we might be able to do that was to sort of introduce technology into the school system, and hopefully that would trickle out and lead to bigger and better opportunities, not only for our students, but also for their parents.
We thought it would be important to know that, or for people to know our transformation, that it didn't happen automatically. We kind of transitioned from a PDF. We started doing the same thing that we had always done. We just put it on the computer, on a device, and we transformed into what we do now, what we're going to talk about now. And so we just made a timeline to kind of show some of how it happened and when. And so the first picture on the timeline was our 2009. That was probably close to deployment day, the first time they had hands on a computer. And so we were really good at uploading PDFs, putting them in there, and doing the same thing that we had always done, just putting it on a computer. Probably about 2 years into it, our second trip to Mooresville, North Carolina, to their school district, I think we had an aha moment where we said, okay, there's more to it. We've got to do more with this. This is not about doing the same thing. We've got to really transform our community and our schools. So we kind of started in 2011. We made some changes. We knew there was more to do, and we just kind of got our feet wet with it. In 2013, I think is when it really started. We really started with the blended learning model, where we do more student-created work, where they are creating their content. So we actually transformed from teacher creating content to now students are creating most of the content. Actually now, even through the elementary school and the high school, we're doing some personalized learning, which we'll talk about too.
You know, one thing I think educators as well as administrators have to understand, when you start an initiative like this, you have to be willing to fail, and you have to accept that failure is an option. It's okay to make mistakes, and administration has to be willing to allow teachers to make mistakes. There has to be a high level of trust between administrators and teachers. If you don't make mistakes, then you aren't trying anything new, and that's certainly not where any of us want to be.
This is the why we do what we do. And the quote says it all. We do students a disservice when we prepare them for a world that no longer exists. We were talking earlier, because we are sisters, that our grandfather and our dad had, they graduated from Piedmont, and they were able to go get a textile-based job in a factory, and they were able to provide for their families. And at this point, it doesn't work that way, and we've got to prepare our kids for the jobs that they will have. And so those jobs aren't there anymore, and so we have to offer them opportunities so that they will be prepared for the jobs that are there.
And I think we have to keep in mind that the education system that most of us are familiar with is based on, you know, what kids needed to be able to do beginning in the Industrial Revolution, you know, up until maybe the last 15 or 20 years. But times have changed, and they've changed rapidly. And if we don't change with them, then we are punishing no one but the kids and our future. So we try to be very cognizant of the fact that what the world that even we grew up in is not the same world in which these kids exist, and we have to prepare them for something completely different.
So I am Brandy Todd, and I'm the fifth grade elementary teacher, and I want to start out by talking about how I changed or what I do differently in the classroom now. I think the title says Paving the Way at the Elementary Level. That's probably, we wanted to put that in there so that, because she's going to talk a lot about, you know, student choice, and I want to tell you about how I prepare them for what she can do with them. Some things we're not able to do that they do at the high school level, which is understandable, but I just wanted you to see some things that, that we do to help them so that they're able to do those things. I think we were just showing, I wanted to show you some differences too. On the left-hand side is the 2009, and so that's a PDF, which when we talk about, we have to talk about plant and animal cells. When we talk about an animal cell, I've uploaded a PDF where they would annotate on that PDF and label the parts of the animal cell. In 2014, which this was just the other day, we actually created, using shapes, an animal cell. They were in the parts with the parts label, and that was a student creation. So I wanted you to see the difference, and I wanted you to see that they actually chose what the shapes looked like. We talked about why that shape represented that. So they were able to do a creation instead of just simply labeling. So things are changing. I also wanted to point out that we are still teaching content. I'm still teaching what is on my curriculum, you know, what are my core standards. That's what I'm teaching. That hasn't changed. The way I'm doing it has changed. The next slide is connecting students to the world. The problem that we have in the elementary school is that they're not really old enough for email addresses. And so we have to be really careful what we allow them to do or what we ask them to do. One of the things that we try to do is prepare them to tweet correctly and to learn how to use that effectively with the world. So one of the things, I don't know if you're familiar with Linowick, but that's a website that we use. It's just a collaborative website. And so my students in their groups, what they did was they grouped together and they came up with Twitter feed that would go along with our buoyancy experiment. What we had done is we had actually created boats out of aluminum foil and the penny boat challenge to see how many pennies each boat could hold when we were talking about density, mass, volume, buoyancy, and science. And so after the penny boat challenge, I allowed them to tweet about it on my classroom Twitter page. So each group, they would brainstorm their tweets, and we kind of talk about it. We talk about how to effectively do that. They love hashtags. And then on the other side, I just posted how I had put those in there that they actually got to post those, and those are viewable by parents or in the community and other followers as well. But I just use that to teach them how to tweet correctly and effectively so that when they are old enough, they know how to do that. Also, it's important to create creative, critical thinkers. In the past, I probably would have given them what's on the left-hand side, a paper with a research report where they answered questions. They would go to the library or the computer lab and they would research. They would also go to or make a poster after they had researched it, and much like what would be on the right-hand side. And so we had done a biome project where they did some of these same things. They did research it, but what they decided to do was that they created an iMovie instead of doing the poster. And so we have one of those to share with you.
Colleen, can you switch control to me? Thanks. All right, I'm going to just share a quick video here. All right, and we're ready to play. So I'm going to go on mute for a minute. This is going to play from every participant's computer, so be sure to have the audio on your computer on. Let me go ahead and play it.
The Taiga. Taiga is an interesting place. You can find the taiga in parts of Canada, Europe, and Asia. It is the biggest biome on
Great. All right, so if you could pass that back to Leanne, or maybe I can do that. There we go. All right, Leanne.
Okay. I also wanted to say that that was the first time that my students as fifth graders had created an iMovie. That was actually one created a couple of weeks ago. It was the first iMovie they had ever created, and along with the research and the credit, so they were taught how to correctly do that as well. So I wanted you to see that so that you can understand that even though they're in elementary school, that is still possible. That things are still possible. This is the last slide for elementary, and this is students learning through collaboration. One of the things that I wanted to share was the picture on the right is a picture that says, you know, there are no computers out. So every day, it's not about computers every day. It's about teaching kids, and it's about doing what's right for them. So what we did, like just in a real-world setting, they created a project. We actually have been studying ecosystems, and they created terrariums and aquariums. We've joined them. We've polluted them. So it's been a long process. So as we're creating, I believe that's a terrarium they're creating and watering. The picture on the left is the discussion board. What we did was we created, just much like you would do in the workforce today, we collaborated on a project, and then we went back and collaborated on a Blackboard discussion board where they talked about what were some of the biotic factors that were in the terrarium and aquarium and some of the abiotic factors. So, and they were able to share as, with the whole class, as well as after they had collaborated in their groups. So I wanted to show that as well, that, you know, it's not just about the device, it's about teaching kids. It's about what's doing right for kids and how to effectively use the device. Now I'm going to pass it over to Leanne.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we integrate technology into the high school classroom, which we have a few more options than they have in elementary school, obviously, because we work with older students. But the one thing I've learned over the last few years is that the most important thing to remember in a technology initiative is that the loudest voice in the classroom can't be yours. It can't be the teacher voice. You can't be the dominant feature in the room. In fact, if you are not beginning to disappear in the room, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. So what I've learned to do, and I teach history, so it's common knowledge that most history teachers think that they are the talkers and they're the great dispensers of knowledge. But I've had to learn to kind of regress from that role, I guess, and step back a little bit and let my students take the lead in the classroom. And so one way that I've done it, and I don't do this all the time, but for many standards, what I do is I've created a Google form, and I give the students the standard that I want them to work on. And I ask them to state that standard in their own words. So first of all, I know they understand what they're looking for and what they're studying. And then I give them the opportunity to decide what kind of project they would like to do to show mastery of that standard. And it's completely and entirely up to them. I do conference with them along the way to make sure they're on the right track, to help them find appropriate resources, to make sure that they know how to accurately cite sources, that they're using, resources that are accurate and viable. But I give them a lot of freedom to make decisions there.
And I want to interrupt, I'm sorry, but I'd like to say that this is why it's so important for elementary teachers to prepare students so that when they get that choice, that they can go out and create a project on their own. So that's why it's my job to teach them how to create an iMovie and how to do a discussion board and how to do the things and tweet and do the things that they need to do so that they can do this when they get to high school.
Right, if they came to me with no background in how to use any of the applications or programs and how to effectively take content and turn it into something of their own, there is no way I could offer this option to them. So, they come to me with a lot of knowledge, and so I'm able to build on that. We have a great foundation here. I do want to point out to you on the right a couple of statements from students last year when I did a survey. I used Blackboard to push out a survey just to kind of see how I was doing, because this was the first time that I had backed off this much and allowed this much student freedom. And I just wanted to make sure that they were okay, because honestly, in the beginning, it was very difficult. They just wanted me to tell them what to do. And I kept telling them, we can do this. It's going to be okay. Just hang with me, and I think you'll be okay. So at the end of the semester, when we tried this, project where we couldn't be afraid to fail, these are the statements I got back. One student said, what I like best about how I'm learning in our class is that we have more freedom to do the assignments we want to and use the applications we want to use the way we want to use them. And another student said, I like how you get to apply what you've learned in different ways. I enjoy being able to show what I know instead of reciting back what someone else has said. So I think another important feature of the classroom is, I think sometimes with technology, we feel like if we sit a kid in front of a device and we give them work to do, that's going to be enough, but it isn't. Not only does the teacher not need to be the loudest voice in the room, the students do need to have a voice in that classroom, and they need to talk to each other. I think they learn the most when there is student-to-student talk. Often my students work in groups where they do get to talk to each other, and sometimes, that conversation may carry on even outside the classroom because many times we use collaborative tools to create group projects such as, Google Slides or a discussion board or a blog or a wiki, and, they're able to continue to communicate with each other even outside the regular walls of the classroom, which I think is also extremely important. The other thing that we've learned that is crucial to student success is to offer them personalized instruction. And the way we do that here at the high school, and this may be changing over time, but what we have done in the recent past is we use Compass Odyssey, and we will give students a pretest on a standard in Compass Odyssey just so the teacher can sort of gauge where students are and where most of the instruction time needs to be spent. And then after the teaching process, then we give another test, a post-test in Odyssey. And the program will generate folders for students based on each student's individual needs. So Compass Odyssey offers us it's a digital content provider that offers us the ability to personalize instruction. So each student only receives the work that that student needs to do, and it's going to remediate that student in the standard that has just been covered by the teacher. And maybe there was just some part of that student didn't quite grasp. So this gives us the opportunity to go back and help those students catch up.
At the elementary level, we offer classworks, which we give a pre and post test, much the same way they do with Compass Odyssey, and we use classworks for our personalized instruction. We use that with small group settings, even through kindergarten all the way through 5th grade at the elementary level.
Brandy, could you repeat the name of the program, Odyssey?
Here. Yes, it's by Compass. It's called Compass Odyssey.
Compass Odyssey. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And at the elementary level, we use classwork to do the same thing that we use in middle school and high school to do with Compass Odyssey. Okay, so we talked about how in the beginning we weren't doing anything that was truly innovative. We had paperless classrooms, and we were probably being kind to the environment, but we weren't doing anything extremely exciting in pedagogy. So it took us a while to get there. But today, I use something, Brandy and I both use something called the SAMR model to help us decide if what we're doing is really valuable in a digital learning environment. Sometimes, and if you look at the picture on the left, that's what we were doing in 2009. We were taking something and pumping it up on steroids and making it look a little bigger and better, when in reality it was just the same thing.
This was our worksheet that was uploaded into our learning management system. It's the same thing. It's just we had just made it look a little bit nicer, a little bit neater.
And if you'll look at the picture on the right that uses the Starbucks analogy for this SAMR model, which is simply a model for technology integration in the classroom, and there are 4 steps to the model. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow these in order. That's not the case. It's just every assignment you create or you intend to give, you need to put it up against this model and see where it comes out. The top left picture on the Starbucks model shows that, it's just a mug of coffee that's been poured in a paper cup and made more portable, okay, made easier. And that's what we were doing. We were taking worksheets and we were, scanning them in, and then we were uploading them into Blackboard and pushing them out to all the students so they could open them in preview and annotate on top of them, and we thought we'd done something fantastic. And it took us a while to figure out, hey, this is not it. If it's something that you could do without the computer, then you probably just don't need to use the computer anyway. The second level is augmentation. And, this is something that you probably could do without the computer, but it wouldn't be as easy. Modification means that you're beginning to push those boundaries and you're doing things that you really would have difficulty doing without the technology. Redefinition is an assignment that you absolutely could not do any part of that assignment without technology. And I'm not saying that's where we are every day, because there are low-level days, and there has to be, because there has to be that base of learning, that base knowledge, and you have to start somewhere. And do I still have days in social studies where we do vocabulary? Yes. Yes, definitely. But that can't be what you do every day. And
right.
That's where we were.
Even the example of the animal cell that I shared would probably fall in augmentation, probably because we could have done that a different way without a computer. So every day is you're not always at the top every day, but that's where you should strive to be.
So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about where we are going now. We've told you where we've been and where we are, and we want to talk to you about where we're heading, especially with our middle school and high school. Middle school is making some major changes this year. 6th grade, no, I take that back. Elementary students all the way through 9th grade this year have engaged in NWEA MAP testing, which is really phenomenal. I don't know how familiar you are with the program, but it's a very, very good program for determining student level, reading levels, and student ability in certain subjects. Yeah, elementary up through 9th grade.
Was used all the way, yes.
Okay, and so the cool thing about the MAP test for middle school students, especially through high school, and I'm sure this works with classwork also, but the MAP test actually communicates with Compass Odyssey. And so what that means is students who master certain standards will see Odyssey folders, digital content folders, removed from their programs, their individual programs, because they've already mastered that standard and would not need to do that work. So, you know, we're sort of beginning to push that envelope with personalized learning. And I think that MAP also communicates with classwork.
It does. At the elementary level, it communicates with classwork, and it puts them on a personalized learning plan.
The other thing that we're beginning to do better is we're beginning to publish student work more. I'm not saying we haven't been doing it, we have, but we're beginning to be more organized about it, more thoughtful about it. For example, we're going to begin to use LinkedIn as a program for our high school students to create digital portfolios, so that when they're ready to segue into you know, college applications or into the workforce, they already have a professional digital profile up and ready for potential employers, and you know, folks who look at scholarship offers can simply go to our students' LinkedIn profile and see all of the work that they've done in high school. Another thing that that our superintendent especially feels is important is that our high school students have experience with online classes. I mean, you know, many colleges today offer a variety of online classes. It is doubtful that a student could get through college today and not have to take at least one online class. So we want them to have experience with that. So they do foreign languages offered here online through PowerSpeak, and we also offer many other classes through Compass Odyssey that students can choose to take online. We have online classes first period for grades 9 through 12. Students in grades 10 through 12, because they're typically drivers, are allowed to stay home every day except one day a week. They're required to come in one day a week, meet with their facilitator, check their progress, make sure that they're reaching the milestones that they should be reaching with their work. And if they are, then they're free to stay home. If they have fallen behind, if they aren't doing well, then they are required to come in daily for assistance. But that's been a huge change here at the high school in the last few years, and it has gone remarkably well. Another thing that we're trying this year is to create some mega classrooms, you know, big classes of kids, 40 to 50 kids, with 2 teachers in the room, using the co-teaching model and the blended approach to learning. And that has actually so far been quite successful for us, and we'll explain that a little more in just a second. On the testing and data, just wanted to kind of show you what we're talking about there. I don't know how well you can see that chart that has the RIT scores, but the RIT scores actually tell you the grade level that a student has scored within. It is a normed test, so it's going to give you, you know, here's where most kids score at this age level. So, you know, for instance, if you have a student who is in the 8th grade, but their RIT score shows they're in 6th grade, you know, you obviously have some work to do with that student. But more specifically, it shows you the specific skills that that child is either strong in or weak in, so you know where to enrich and you know where to remediate specifically. Teachers can do that, you know, within the classroom at their own discretion, but we also have digital content providers like Compass Odyssey and Classwork that push out digital content to students based on those RIT scores. We talked about publishing a little bit, and I failed to mention when I talked about LinkedIn, I failed to mention that this year we have a film studies class, which is an elective class, but it's a really great class, and a very, very good, passionate teacher who loves to show old films to students. He has actually begun to use Blogger in his film class this year. And before he would just create assignments, something, questions to answer, or something to do at the end of each film. But this year they have created their own blog, and they've been blogging about the movies that they watch. And, he follows their blog so that he can grade them through Blogger. But they've really had a good experience there. It's given them a lot of freedom, and it's putting them out there. We're teaching them to be good digital citizens and participants in the digital world. Again, we talked about those online classes and what happens when they're doing well. They're allowed to stay home, except for one day a week. When they're not, then they're required to come in each day. On the left, you see PowerSpeak. That's our foreign language digital content provider. On the right, you see Compass Odyssey. And we have many classes that are offered in Compass Odyssey, including health. That's something our students take online. This year, we're doing an online U.S. history class, and that's going pretty well, too.
I want to say, too, that being in a small system, we don't have the staff to offer all the necessary classes, and so these online classes free up some teachers as well as allow students to take classes they never would have been able to take before.
Right. We have students who, in Piedmont, Alabama, a town of 5,000, very rural northeast Alabama, who take courses such as Latin and Chinese. That definitely would not be possible without technology. Just to give you a little more information about what we've done with the Mega Classroom, I'm actually a co-teacher this year with another teacher, and we meet in the Media Center. And we use small group instruction. We also use some direct instruction. We do some project-based learning. We really do just a little bit of everything. And we use a rotation model. And we also use data to drive those rotations. For instance, if I give a formative assessment and I see that there are 5 or 6 students who are just completely lost on what we've done the last few days, that's going to be my small group. That's who I'm going to pull. And everybody else is going to do something different, and then we're just going to rotate around until everyone has been visited each station. But I'm going to start with that group as my small group, and I'm going to remediate them. And that has really been more successful than I even imagined it would be this year.
I also want to mention here that we have partnered with our local university, Jacksonville State University, and it's known as a teacher university. So we have partnered with them, and we get student teachers that stay with us an entire school year that have been trained on the co-teaching model. They have a co-teaching supervisor from Jacksonville State that will come and observe them just on the co-teaching model. So we have also been trained in those as well. So we do that along with some student teachers from our local university. So we use all the resources that we can find. And we have to. I mean, we're a small system, and we actually, in all honesty, rely on practicum students and student teachers from JSU. They help us tremendously. They're an important part of our process. And we're grateful for the influence that we're able to have on higher education, right here sort of in our backyard, because one of the problems that I see that our students have is that when they leave us, they go to higher ed that is just not equipped, and just almost leap years behind what our students have been doing. They're leaving us from a project-based learning type atmosphere, and they're going to an atmosphere where there's 200 students in a classroom and the professor talks the whole time. I do not believe that is effective instruction, and it saddens me that our kids go and have a disappointing experience. So we're very hopeful that our influence will begin to spread through our partnership with Jacksonville State University. Okay, Katie, that's all that we have. If there's something that you want to add or something we need to answer or go back and talk about again, we'll be glad to.
Hey, yeah, I definitely have a few wrap-up slides at the end, but I want to answer some questions that are coming into the chat. We've been handling some as they've come in, but I've got one here I can direct to you verbally. So how can you combine direct instruction, individualized instruction, project in a mega classroom? It's hard to visualize. Can you give more details?
Sure. We literally have stations, like in elementary school when you had centers. We have centers for big kids, literally. We have different parts of the room that they move to at different times. So in one part of the room, we might have out a cart of 30 iPads, and we might be using Erasmus to build a, to build a project. While in the back of the room, you might have 10 or 12 kids with a teacher who's giving direct instruction on a new topic. Over on the other part of the room, you might have students who are working on individualized digital content that's been pushed out to them through a digital content provider. So literally, it is much like the elementary classroom centers that most people are very familiar with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to chat. Does that make sense, Jessica? A follow-up question from Jessica. Do each of the students do each of the stations? Yes. There is a rotation that occurs, and we make certain that every student has visited each rotation before we move on to another standard. Yes. Great. And it is still standards-based. We have to. And we're held to that. Okay, I'm also
and that wouldn't, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, but the feedback that's very helpful, and thank you.
I don't know that it would necessarily go like that every day. I mean, I'm thinking as far as elementary, we do things differently on a daily basis. One day my classroom may be set up in those type centers. One day it may be whole group instruction for 15 minutes. Then we may split apart. So there are different ways to do it. You have to find what works for you and on with that specific standard on that specific day. If you would like more information about the blended learning model, if you will look at the Ed Elements website, they have all of the models explained in great detail. And sometimes we use a combination of models. We don't always stick to one thing, and we've been very fortunate to have administration who allows us to do that.
Okay. And there are a couple more questions that have come in from Miguel Daza. What's the role of digital leadership in these academic processes you are leading? The first question.
Digital leadership as in administrative leadership, or, we have a digital curriculum coordinator who's over the digital content, digital providers, K through 12. That's pretty much her job. She oversees which content providers we use, how we incorporate them. She makes sure that the map testing talks to the various content providers that we use. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
Yeah, I'll put that back to Miguel. Can you add a clarifying question if that did not answer it, or confirm that your question was answered? And I'll move to the next question, but we'll come back to Miguel, provide his feedback, or follow up with a slightly different question. Margaret's asking if you can provide additional information about retrieving data and testing of students engaged in a mega classroom.
For the data, I don't solely rely on Compass Odyssey for data, but I do use it simply because it will, once I use a pre-test and a post-test in Compass Odyssey, it will actually show me student growth. And so I can see, here's where my student was in understanding of the standard before the teaching, here's where my student is after the teaching. Throughout the process, I might even use something like Socrates to see, how we're coming along from the pre-test before we get to a post-test, just to make sure that I'm not leaving anybody behind.
And I'll ask a follow-up question to that. Have you experimented with, competency learning in Blackboard at all? You can, in Blackboard, the assessments that you're delivering, whether they're wikis, blogs, journals, discussions, forms of authentic assessment, or using the assessment engine itself, the test tool or assignment tool, those things can be aligned to state or Common Core standards, and then, performance certainly measured upon those at the class and individual level. Have you or have any other teachers in Piedmont experimented with standards-based learning, competency learning in Blackboard itself?
Yes, we have. We use the test quizzes. We use the assignment Dropbox. Well, we call them Dropboxes. I don't know what Blackboard assignment boxes. We use probably every feature of Blackboard. I think we took it for granted. We think everybody uses it. But yes, that is always a given that we do use that. We align our folders, our content folders with standards, along with our tests and our blogs, our discussion forums. Usually, whatever we use, we can do that with.
Yeah, and one other thing I've been looking into in Blackboard is using the badges. And I've worked on that a good bit this first 9 weeks, trying to figure out how I could use that with Mastery Learning to issue badges through Blackboard to my students that they can actually push out to their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, actually our session, our Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series session last Friday was on Mastery Learning and using achievements to support that. So I will certainly share that link out when we have it.
Okay.
But the last session was on that, so that might be helpful. And going back to Miguel's question, he said, digital leadership that enhances the use of technology in the classroom. And with your first response, you were, responding on point.
Okay.
So I think that you answered it. Another question from Jessica. So many of the older teachers at my school are very afraid of technology and not open to using it because they're not comfortable enough or flexible enough with technology to teach with it in a way that's productive. What type of professional development did you provide for teachers?
Our superintendent's not in the room with us, but I think that he would say he agrees with what we're saying. We got really very little in the beginning.
There wasn't anyone doing
but
it.
Nobody was doing what we were doing in the area, so we were just sort of out there. I compare it to being out in the ocean with no life preserver, and we were just trying to figure it out on our own. Now, since then, we've done a better job of trying to support those reluctant learners, teacher learners. I would be lying if I said that we didn't have that problem, because we do. We do have older teachers who are entrenched in their ways and in what they've always done. But one thing we've done is we've added at the middle school and at the high school level folks like me who are instructional coaches who support teachers. If I can encourage a teacher to try one new thing, every 3 or 4 weeks, then I feel like, I've accomplished something. But, it's sort of my job to go in and introduce them to different ways of doing things, to stay in the room with them and support them through the lesson. And, something will go wrong. It will. That's what we're talking about in the beginning when we're talking about failure. You have to be willing to fail forward. It is going to happen. You have to accept it. Folks who can't do that are going to be very unhappy in their profession.
Here's another interesting question. At what age do your students use LinkedIn?
We are in the learning stages of using LinkedIn. At this point, it is only going to be available to high school students, and we are beginning with seniors this year. So we're working on coming up with an agreement with the LinkedIn Corporation, and so that is still in sort of the baby phases, but we're working on that. It will probably be a high school thing only for a while.
Great. Okay, I'm still watching for more questions here. I apologize, post them in again if I'm missing them. We're getting a lot, so I'm really great to hear that. Miguel is asking, does your principal have a significant role in this educative process?
Other than to sort of ensure that teachers are following through and doing what they've been asked to do, I'll be honest, we're a small system. We all know each other by name. The superintendent knows each of us by name, and I know that's very odd to some people, but it's, we're sort of just a small family, and we have been given a lot of autonomy. So, no, there aren't really a lot of principals who, breathe down our necks. It doesn't really work that way here.
probably one important job would be to make sure everything is working correctly,
right,
and that you have everything you need to support.
Yeah.
But they probably, you know, they don't get the same professional development that we receive, so they're not going to know exactly how to do what we're doing. And they know if they come in and the room's wild and everyone's up, that's learning, and so that's expected. You know, they give us the freedom to teach the way that we want to teach.
Well, and I would say, you know, just, you know, from my personal experience working with Piedmont from the time you began your one-to-one initiative, it's also unique in the fact that, you know, this is absolutely a district-wide initiative, you know, starting with the superintendent, you know, everyone, you know, from principals to teachers to the superintendent to, you know, school board members across the entire community is on board, you know, and buys into this entire program. Can you speak to that a little bit? I think it kind of speaks to the role of the principal a bit.
Sure. This was definitely Matt Aiken's vision, our superintendent. This was his vision for how to transform this community. You know, and when he first came to us, we thought it was the most ridiculous, outlandish, no way it was ever going to happen thing we'd ever heard. But, you know, certainly we bought in. And over time, more and more people continued to buy in. You know, there were some of us in the beginning who were probably the front runners, who took it and just ran with it and tried to figure out everything we could about it. But over time, yes, I definitely think we've won over the majority of the district and certainly much of the community.
You know, it was at a time where our community was dying. Our school system, we were losing, you know, at student enrollment, and now we're gaining at numbers we really can't handle. And so I think it was at a perfect time, and most of us are from the community. Our parents were once in the school, our kids go to school here, and so it was something that we believed in and we wanted to change, and we wanted something that would transform the community just like he did. So we all believed in it.
That's great. Looking to see more questions. Okay, a question about, are there any step-by-step resources that you would recommend for those uncomfortable with teaching about how to tweet or how to create, you know, iMovies? 2 examples, but not totally comfortable with. So I don't know, Leanne and Brandy, if you would have specific recommendations for, you know, tweeting in the classroom and iMovies. I will mention one thing before I hand that question to you. Jessica, we have a class, Blackboard developed class. I actually developed it called 5 Ways to Blend Your Class with Blackboard. And Colleen, can you put the link to how to sign up to 5 Ways to Blend Your Class? It introduces a series of ideas for getting started, you know, either in a one-to-one environment or a blended environment, but getting started incorporating technology in your classroom. I think Leanne and Brandy will be better resources for pointing you to specific resources for tweeting and iMovies, but that's one resource that Blackboard can provide. And I want to mention that it is also a class that we provide to every one of our customers at no cost if they would like to have the class in their environment. So they can use it with every one of their teachers. So we'll be pasting that link in the chat for anyone that is interested. But Leanne and Brandy, any tips for iMovies and tweeting in the classroom?
You've got to be willing to dive in the deep end. I mean, you do. You have to be willing to try things. You have to be willing to say, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else next time. You have to be willing to go home and play with things and work with applications and figure things out for yourself, because I can sit down and go through a step-by-step explanation of iMovie, but until you actually put your hands on it and you do it yourself, you're not going to understand it. Is it okay to go ahead and use it in the classroom when you don't fully understand an application? Yes, and yes, and yes. Because you know who does understand it? Your kids in that room do. And when you don't know how to do something, if you're willing to look at a student and say, hey, can you show me how you did that? that's when you're going to see success.
I was going to say the iMovies that we created, this is my 5th year doing it. I think they were telling me new stuff as we were doing it. Also, the first year deployment day that we got our computers, I think I tried an iMovie. I don't know why. I was really dumb, but I allowed my students to make a commercial. I was teaching language at the time, and they told me how to do it. I had no clue. So I don't really know of any resources except
be willing to dive in. Be willing to dive in.
And we did it together.
Yes.
And tweeting, I Googled some tips. I allow my students to read the Google tips on tweeting. We talk about it. That's, you know, and then I just try to use that in the classroom. You know, by the time they get to high school, they're pros at it anyway. So.
Probably not what people want to hear, but from our experience, that's been the truth. The teachers who are the front runners, the ones who are kind of out there in the front and the lead with the technology initiative, have been the teachers who were not afraid to jump in the deep end.
And find that group, and you know, friend that group and talk with them. We would talk on the phone at night. You know, we helped each other. We still do.
Yeah, you know, the ones who were out there as the front runners, we were so passionate about it that we might be texting each other at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, hey, guess what I just figured out how to do? So that collaboration, that support from each other, and that willingness to fail forward are key to your success in that initiative.
Great. Thank you so much. And Jessica says thanks for the advice. She's a first-year teacher, and she's nervous about bringing in new types of teaching. And she agrees. We just need to dive in. So she says, thank you for helping push me. So very nice.
We'll push her in the deep end.
That's an interesting visual, but yeah, that's a good thing. Well, Leanne and Brandy, thank you so much for a great presentation. It's generated lots of great questions and interesting discussion. We really appreciate it. That's exactly what this series is for. So thank you for sharing your wealth of expertise with us today. We really appreciate it, and we're very excited to, capture the presentation and package it up along with the presentation that you gave. Brandy and Leanne presented with their superintendent, Matt Aiken, at BB World this summer. So if you haven't caught their presentation this summer, you can do so through the BB K-12 Live app, and this presentation will also be fed there. We will be sending out the link to this presentation following today's session, so be looking for it, as well as with access to the online professional learning community. So thank you again for participating in today's session. We're actively lining up sessions for our spring series, so please let me know if you're interested in presenting or if you have ideas for topics that you'd like to see in those spring sessions. You can reach me on Twitter at @Katie_Gallagher or by email, katie.gallagher@blackboard.com. You'll receive this recording and presentation slides in a few days by email, and an invitation to participate in the online PLC designed to augment the series and create an avenue for ongoing collaboration like we had today and dialogue. So please accept it and participate. Again, join us next Monday at the same time, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, for the Flipped Classroom, Growing Student Engagement in Elementary Instrumental Music with Kristen Gomez from Arlington Public Schools. She served on a panel at BB World this summer, and it's fascinating to hear how she is actually flipping her music classroom. Just fascinating. So go to bb.blackboard.com/K12bits to register for any and all sessions within the series. And thank you again, everyone, for participating today. Especially thank you to our presenters, Leanne and Brandy from Piedmont City Schools. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Katie.